Hey everybody! Now regarding this controversy about Just Pearly Things and her recent interview with white supremacist Nick Fuentes. Now I know many people took issue with the comments she made about Africans and African time, the comments she made about my Africans and alluding to the fact that they work better or harder than Americans. More specifically, they took issue with the comments that she made around slavery and it not being that big of a deal. I'm trying to figure out why so many people are surprised. To me, a white woman sitting down with a white man to talk about white identity politics is not surprising. And when I mean white identity politics, what I mean is the kind of idea or the kind of mindset that you would need to have to say that slavery isn't that big of a deal, or to laugh about the Holocaust or things that have obviously hurt minorities, people of color, Black people, all of the above. And the kind of mindset that could say that slavery is no big deal is one of the reasons that the topic of reparations is so controversial, and also why it hasn't happened. Although it has happened for the Jewish community and the Japanese community and the Native American community and other communities, right? It's happened for them. But one of the reasons it has not happened for Black America is because there is this mindset that slavery was not so bad. Now, my question always is, if slavery wasn't so bad, then why did it literally divide an entire nation, creating a civil war? And then why did even white people, after the war was ended, why did white people get reparations? Why did white slave owners need reparations after slavery was ended if it wasn't so bad? So, I mean, when you really look at those ideas, you know that they fall flat, but nevertheless, these are popular ideas that continue to be celebrated or that continue to be popular in mainstream culture. And we know this and we see this by the policies that are passed or not passed. So again, when I said a white woman sitting down and talking to a white man about things that white people talk about behind closed doors, like, this is not surprising to me. Of course, there's white people out there who think slavery wasn't that big of a deal. If they didn't think that, reparations would have already happened. I think what we're forgetting around this conversation is that her ideals and the ideals that were expressed in that interview are nothing new. This idea has been going on since slavery existed in America. I mean, literally, the South was fighting the North because they believed that slaves and Black people were better under bondage, that they were happy slaves. Like, this was pretty much an ideology. And it was a thing that kept them fighting to try to maintain their slaves, their property. Not to mention, even after that fact, there has been this consistent need to downplay not only slavery, but Jim Crow, Reconstruction, redlining, all of the institutional things that have been done to consistently put Black people as a primitive underclass. There continues to be a push to do that in the political realm. To me, I'm not really surprised. I've said this from the beginning. To me, she is a business person. She's a capitalist, and she knows how to use the resources that she has to get above, to get ahead. That is capitalism. White people in general have always gone into Black spaces and gathered information, gathered data, gathered the best talent, and then used their social position to pivot into white spaces or to mainstream in order to grow their resources. Again, this is nothing new. This has happened literally forever. If you look at just American music, period, that's happened. Blues, right? Jazz, hip hop, pop, even country. A lot of the genres now that we say are white had a Black origin. That is capitalism. Now, I know we want to talk about, okay, this was wrong. She shouldn't have said that. She shouldn't have done that. We need to culturally gatekeep these conversations. And I think these are valid concerns. But this actually brings me to my other point. And so when you want to talk about cultural gatekeeping, what does it actually mean? How can you culturally gatekeep a community that has chosen integration? Black people chose integration over 50 years ago, and we have essentially been integrated or been trying to integrated America since then. Dr. Martin Luther King himself said that he feared that he had integrated his people into a burning house. And perhaps this is what he was talking about. But again, when we want to talk about cultural gatekeeping, it actually means something. And so these conversations about cultural gatekeeping, they actually can become really confusing and blurred and unclear unless there are actually systems in place to help keep that possible and to help create those boundaries, to create helpful structures, to create help those systems that actually help to maintain that. Do we even have the resources available to do that? And are we actually willing to do that practically? And to me, it's really fake outrage, because if we did think that this was a serious problem, then we would actually come up with the resources and the mechanisms in the organization and the protection to ensure that this doesn't happen. And so now when we want to talk about cultural gatekeeping, what does that actually look like? If you look at other communities, for example, the Chinese community, the Jewish community, the Indian community, the Korean community, these are just to name a few, they all actually have their own system. They have their own schools. They have their own languages that they practice. They have their own grocery stores. Chinatown, Koreatown, Japanese town, Little Italy, just to name a few. These are ideas of cultures who actually believe in cultural gatekeeping and have created a system and an economy to where they have autonomy, to where they can actually call the shots, to where they can actually choose to hire who they want to hire, where they make the decisions, where they actually get to tell their own story. That is what cultural gatekeeping looks like. But how can you culturally gatekeep? How can you culturally gatekeep from white people when you're speaking their language? Black women, how can we culturally gatekeep from white women when we're wearing their hair? How can we culturally gatekeep from a community that we depend upon for resources, for groceries, for clothes, for education, for schools, for banks, you see what I'm saying? Not to assume that there hasn't in the past been attempts. There absolutely has been. There were countless towns, over dozens of towns that were Black owned, that were Black ran, partially out of necessity. Many of those towns were burned down. And so the reason I say that this can be fake outrage is because when it comes down to what it would actually entail for this to actually happen in a real way that would be meaningful, none of those systems, none of those things are in place for Black America. And the question becomes, is it something that we really want? I think if there is a genuine concern to want to culturally gatekeep these conversations, if there is a genuine concern to want to make sure that Black people can be respected in spaces where they are predominant or in spaces where they continuously give their resources, their talent, their time, then there has to be a conversation about how we can actually do that practically. And if there's not, then in my opinion, it's just fake outrage. This is just something that we talk about for a couple of weeks. We get mad, you go back and forth. But at the end of the day, people continue to support Just Pearly Things. Some people may not support her anymore, but she ain't going on anywhere, and neither is the situation going to change. It comes down to the choice is yours. Choose your side. If you want a cultural gatekeep, then be serious about it. Go and support people who are doing it. You do your part. Maybe go build something. Encourage men, ladies, who are building something, or work alongside men who are doing it. Actually go and create the spaces to do it. But we can't talk about cultural gatekeeping and we're not even speaking our own language, or we're not even learning about a language to where we could control, to where others wouldn't understand. There's a reason why when Africans were trafficked over into the Americas for slavery, there's a reason why they kept them from speaking their own language, kept them from using their own practices, tried to strip them completely from their culture as much as possible, because they knew that that was the way that they could go and organize and control and have a sense of autonomy. This is why there was a need to try to extract the languages and the practices and the cultures, everything related to it. And so now fast forward, we see the effects of that in full-fledged. We can't talk about cultural gatekeeping in Black spaces when we're on a white-ran YouTube page or in a white-owned Twitter or account or Chinese-owned TikTok. It's like we can't talk about cultural gatekeeping in spaces where we have no autonomy and no control. And that's my bigger point. And if that doesn't matter to you, then no big deal. Like I said, go around, integrate, have fun, do whatever, but just don't be surprised if you experience anti-Black sentiments, because those ideas are still floating around. And Black people, because those ideas are still floating around. We see it even in Black people. So how much more would it be floating around in greater America and white America and other spaces? Because people still have not fully reconciled what race has meant and still means today, socially, economically, politically. And all I'm saying is that it's just good to be aware, and it's just good to acknowledge these obvious facts and then move accordingly. But what do you think? Do you agree or do you disagree? Let me know. Leave your questions, comments, concerns in the comment section below. Thank you so much for listening if you've gotten this far, and we'll talk later. Bye.